Good morning, everyone. This is betoparedes. You are getting on here for the morning mindset. Wow, we just had like 8 of you join all at the same time. You guys must have somehow got coordinated there. So I am here in my office. Yesterday I had a good day. I was actually spent some time with my son. He's 2, and we took him to Chuck E. Cheese for the first time ever. And we're like, man, he's gonna love it. It was so funny because he ended up really liking the experience. But man, he was scared of everything for a minute. We put him on one of those little merry-go-round things, and he was like, "Get me out of here!" So, anyways, it was pretty cute. But yeah, it was great. It was my son's second birthday yesterday, so I spent some time with him. Today is going to be an amazing opportunity for you to learn about something that I kind of live by just a little bit. It's also something that may be worth looking into as far as the individual that I've actually brought in here today. So I do a lot of study into psychology, and it's actually a passion of mine. And one of my favorite psychologists kind of gave some information on how to actually develop and culture your will. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So if you're new to the morning mindset, welcome. We usually spend about 10, 20 minutes here first thing in the morning. If you are new, grab yourself a pen, grab yourself a notebook. Hey, if you're not new and you're continuing to come to the mindsets, grab a pen, grab a notebook. Make a few notes. We're going to try to get some fire in our cup, make this day an amazing day, and do something that really matters for our businesses, for our families, for our lives. So attention creates interest, which equals focused will. This is a very powerful tool. A lot of times we start thinking about the things that we're trying to accomplish. It could be anything. It could be us sitting down and making the next 30 phone calls. It could be knocking out that proposal. If for those of you that are book writers, creative, could be getting your chapter written. Could be a number of things. We have these things in our minds that we've got to accomplish. And a lot of times we're fighting with ourselves somewhat emotionally, or we're just splitting our attention. We know we need to get to certain things. We start putting it off. And you know what the most dangerous thing about putting things off is? It's the 5-minute put off that we do all the time. I'll get to that in just a minute. Well, that just a minute usually turns into just an hour. And that just an hour, maybe I'm going to get it this weekend. I'm going to get it done this weekend. And the weekend comes, and it just kind of keeps going, right? It's like we get this idea in our minds that these small put-offs, it's going to be okay. But once we've done it once, we can put it off a little bit more because we only put it off 5 or 10 minutes, and I was going to put it off like an hour. It's okay. I don't know how many of you get caught in that habit, but I do that. So part of the reasons why we don't get right into something a lot of times is because we don't feel like we've got a solid foundation, that our state that we're in isn't prepared for us to enter and engage into something important. Writing a proposal, for example, man, okay, all my ideas are coming to me now. It's time for me to sit down. I'm really feeling like I can just knock this out. Well, there may be a situation where I don't feel like knocking it out. Okay, we'll use a proposal as an example because that one's a little bit easier, at least something we can focus on, and then we'll expand it out from there. So when you're writing a proposal, you have to think about the individual people that are going to be reading it, right? You have to think about all the metrics, the legal. You have to consider all of the benefits and also the potential points of the break in the relationship. There's a lot that goes into a proposal. And I read a lot of joint venture proposals. Those are, just a little bit more than what would be in a usual proposal. So it takes a lot of thought. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll kind of get into these organics where we keep it in the back of our mind as we keep working, like, okay, what am I going to put into this thing? What am I going to make this, what do I want to get out of this relationship? How much is it going to cost? Well, one of the powerful tools that's taught by a gentleman, I mess his name up a lot, but his name is Reberto Assagioli. He's actually Italian. He was a depth psychologist, a transpersonal psychologist. He wrote a book on willpower and how to develop the will. And it wasn't a raw book. It wasn't, a Tony Robbins style book. I have nothing against that. I love Robbins. It was a lot more practical. right? You'd imagine that's how a psychologist might kind of adapt to something like, how do you develop your will, as opposed to, the 25-minute mirror talk before you run to your desk. So he had a formula, and I use it. I use it a lot. Okay. So attention creates interest, which equals focused will. If you're feeling like you're not getting the inspiration, or you're not in the state that you should be in to work on something, what's very tricky about that, and might even say Murphy's Laws even a little bit in this, is you're not going to get the gumption or the desire or the focus until you start doing whatever it is. So, and again, that's not all the time. Sometimes we're suddenly rushed with all of the insight and all of the, oh man, now I know everything that's going to go into this proposal. Let me sit down right now and bang it out, right? It's kind of like when a writer kind of gets this, oh man, I know exactly what these characters are going to do. Now they write the next chapter of their book. So the reality is, if you'll start paying attention to what it is that you need to do and focus on it, the interest to do it, the energy to do it, the ideas, everything that you need to go beyond that point of inspiration to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, it will come to you at that time. And if we're always waiting around for those moments to come, I'm not quite ready to get on the phones, I'm not quite ready to sit down and write this proposal, I'm still thinking it through. Well, we're basically putting a barrier between us and the things that we're trying to accomplish on a consistent basis. Okay, especially if it becomes a habit for you to do this. What you'll notice is you'll have a million things that you're never getting to. Okay, and the unfortunate danger to that is those things could be very important to whether or not you progress from where you are to a better job, or into running your own business, or into moving on with your life and not being stuck in the place that you feel you're stuck in. So use this formula. I use it. I love it. It works. So if you're having a difficult time focusing, remember the rule of willpower from clinical psychologist Reberto Assagioli. Listen to me slaughter his name. Assagioli. There we go, I think. Attention goes into imagination. What we're all waiting for is for our imagination to show up and be like, hey, Beto, here's all of the ways this is going to work. Can't you see it working in your mind? Well, if you pay attention to something, if I sit down at that proposal and I pull up the Word document and I pull up my template and I start my review, it's the attention that's going to bring me into the point of imagination. Well, what is incredible about Roberto's program is that what we're really looking for, and we've talked about this in another mindset from another perspective, we called it ignition, right? Is that impulse, that desire, where we're like, oh, here we go. Oh, I got it. All right, now I'm going to start writing. That moment where a writer who's writing a story suddenly actually understands what they're wanting to write. They start brilliantly putting together the dialogue. Believe it or not, software developers work very similar, right? I always compare software development to book writing. And again, that's a whole nother conversation. So once you start paying attention to what you're trying to get done, your imagination will engage, and the impulse and desire, that inspiration that you're looking for, will be focused and funneled towards the project, towards the number of calls you're going to make, towards the conversation you're having, towards the attention you're paying to your child, towards the attention you're paying to yourself and trying to figure out your finances. It's so simple that we can't believe it's true and we don't use it. If you just start focusing on it and put your attention on it, the next thing that engages is your imagination. Now your mind's like, okay, well, Beto wants to actually look at this. Okay, so well, this is what it might look like. And then suddenly the impulse and desire, or that ignition, kicks in, and I feel inspired to work on it, right? That inspiration leads to practical thought. Okay, once that inspiration's there, now I've got this energy. You guys have heard me talk about the energy in your psyche, and you've got a certain amount of it during the day. Now the energy, my brain energy, the neural firing in my executive function in my brain gets kicked in, and now I'm starting to have the thoughts that I need to be organized, programmatic, and practical about what I'm trying to do. Now I'm writing the details of my proposal. These are the things we're going to do. These are the things you're going to do. This is what we want from the deal. This is what we think you should get from the deal. This is how long it's going to take us. Extra, extra, extra. Okay, and we're now actually getting it done. Or if it's phone calls, it's like you finally sat down, you saw yourself doing well on the phone, you start picking up the phone, and now you're going from one call to your notes, to your next call to your notes, to your next call to your notes. Okay, now thought comes in, that the processing of the activity that you're doing. Okay, well, once that starts to kick in, well, here comes the best part. Then your intuition kicks in. Okay, now that you have put your attention on it, your imagination has engaged it, your impulse, your trigger, right, to really have this inspiration moving, or that energy comes to you. Your thoughts start to process, and now you start to see the variables. This is where we always have those times where like I'll call my partner Kyle, and I'll be like, oh man, I was working on this thing, but suddenly all this stuff came to me. Now, really, this is how we should do it. Then the intuition kicks in. Okay, and then you really start to work on things. You get better, you get inspired, you see the future. That magic moment that you're looking for that takes you beyond the system, from where you sat down to write the proposal to really seeing it happen. Now things are coming to you. Okay, now your intuition's kicked in. Okay, and then that full cycle equals massive productivity. Okay, high levels of productivity. And you've got to not reverse the situation. You can't be looking for the right thoughts before your attention's there. You can't be expecting things to suddenly come into your imagination unless your attention's there. You can't just be waiting for that impulse, for that ignition to come in, unless you've actually done the simplest part of the process, and that is divert all of your attention to whatever it is that you're trying to do. And it's simple, but he wrote an entire book, which is very worth buying, by the way, on the development of the will. And this was one of the golden rules, is that, I mean, you don't feel like doing it, you don't feel inspired about it, you don't think you're the right person to do it, you've got all the insecurities about it, you've never done it before. Man, you could make a gigantic laundry list as to why you shouldn't put your attention on something. Okay, we do that a lot. What you want to do, and I'm encouraging you to do, is to just clear all of that aside and put your attention on what it is you're trying to get done. Okay, now doesn't that sound simple? Can't you go backwards in times to coaches and teachers and parents, friends, colleagues, business partners, and think of at least 100 different times where they're like, well, you've got to put your attention on it. This isn't complicated. This isn't esoteric. Okay, put your attention on it. If you're not feeling like you can get it done, remember this will happen. If your attention's on it, it might take a minute, your imagination's going to kick in. Once that kicks in, that ignition's going to turn on. You have the impulse. You're going to want to do it. Okay, attention equals interest. Okay, attention creates interest. Attention equals interest. If you're not interested in working on it, okay, and believe me, if you're coming up with excuses, you're not interested in working on it. That's what it really is. Okay, but if you put your attention on it, it cultivates interest. You'll become interested in doing it. Okay, because human beings have a very difficult time doing anything that they don't have a high interest in doing. Okay, but if you put your attention on it, even if you don't have that interest and you're fighting yourself, okay, if you put your attention on it, it will cultivate interest. Look at it more scientifically. Okay, it's a pretty solid science. Okay, psychology is a soft science. I don't know if any of you get into it much, and you know, the word soft is a difficult thing for me because, you know, we're talking about hard science like physics and things. I'm a very big fan of quantum mechanics and a number of things I study. But the soft sciences, or the qualia of the brain, let's just say, is not necessarily an inaccurate science. Okay, it just means that it's more subjectively based, right? They can't throw it in a hadron collider and split the atoms. And so it's still a science, and it still has to have a foundational purpose behind its relevance. Okay, it has to. I mean, you're going to trust a psychologist with your spouse to go through a process with them. There better be some solid science behind that. Well, this is a psychologist that's actually one of the leaders in the field of transpersonal psychology, depth psychology, and you can believe one thing, this is a very effective model that he's used with hundreds of his patients. Okay, so this is science. Okay, you don't have to get emotionally caught up in the idea that you don't feel inspired, that you're not the right person, you can't get it done. Focus your attention, it will kick in your imagination, your desire or that ignition will show up. You'll begin to thought process through the things that you're doing. That will bring in inspiration and intuition, and your productivity levels will go up. It's science. Okay, you can't come in and say, well, Beto, if I put a gas in my car, I can't drive my car because just because I don't believe it can. There's a science behind putting gas in your car. There's engineers that built cars, and if you put gas in that car and you turn it on and you hit the gas, it's going to drive. Okay, so you want to look at this as science. If you feel uninspired, if you feel that you can't get through things, if you feel that you plan to make 40 calls and you made 2 yesterday and you're feeling down about it, look at it from a scientific point of view. If I put my attention on it, my imagination is going to kick in. Then I know that as I continue to keep working and focusing all my attention on it, that I'm going to get my desire is going to show up, right? My ignition is going to fire up. Then I'm going to start thought processing through it. It's going to be automatic. That thought process I can't get right now, it's going to come automatically. Then I'll start seeing all the things that I don't understand about what I need to get done here. My intuition will kick in, and my productivity levels will go higher. Okay, just believe it as a science and focus on the simple part. Attention cultivates interest and equals productivity. Okay, wonderful book, worth picking up. This is one of the methods that I use on a consistent basis, especially when I start to get despairing or unfocused. Okay, so let's use this formula today. Hopefully this helped you guys out. Let's get out there. Let's make something powerful happen today. Let's close some sales. Let's make 2 times as many calls as we did yesterday. Let's write that proposal, right? Let's get through these processes and let's put our attention on the things that matter. I will be back here again tomorrow morning.